While we're finding out the real cost of a full memory wipe, the algorithm gives Camille a false report about what happened to Lucas, Kyle, and Patrick Kennedy, and that's exactly what makes us start doubting everything it says. That kind of spontaneity was actually a smart move on Juliette's part. Thanks to Robert, she already knows the vitamin D+ has made its way into the water supply, so time is running out fast. Once he's outside, Patrick can't believe there's literally nothing out there. Meanwhile, Lucas is busy admiring the stars. That's a direct callback to one of his earlier conversations with Juliette, where he told her about the lights in the sky. Lucas didn't know it at the time, since knowledge inside the silo is so limited, but what he was actually looking at was the constellation Cassiopeia. Later on, that very memory turns out to be a key piece in helping Juliette get her own memories back. When Patrick and Lucas approach the neighboring silo, the algorithm makes its move. We hear a rumbling sound, along with something unsettling that sounds like gunfire. We don't actually know what happened out there, but the algorithm confidently tells Camille that it's all over for Patrick and Lucas. And in that same conversation, it drops another important detail. The safeguard doesn't end with one gas pipe. In case that failsafe ever gets taken out, the founders built backups. But we really can't trust the algorithm 100%. It was completely convinced Patrick and Lucas didn't make it, but Patrick eventually got in touch with our crew over the radio. Which makes you wonder what else the algorithm might have lied about over the years. Its comment about extra failsafes feels like a pretty direct hint that the founders themselves are behind the toxic surface. Silo 17 had its safeguard shut off because its residents never got proper protective suits, and that ended in tragedy. The algorithm specifically brings up Silo 17 as an example of having multiple failsafes in place at once. Reading between the lines, it sounds like the toxic surface itself is one of those failsafes. I'm not that surprised. Once you look at the people involved in this whole conspiracy back in Daniel's timeline, it all starts to click into place. We'll get into them a little later. Even if Teddy's plan had gone through, it wouldn't have solved anything. It would have just sped up the algorithm's next fatal call. So, our heroes really lucked out that Kennedy finally checked in when he did. His plan was to force his way into Judicial and expose and shut off the pipes carrying the dangerous gas. That puts somewhere between 100 and 1,000 civilians at risk, but it could save everyone else from having their memories wiped. Juliette isn't ready to go there. She can't justify risking 1,000 lives on something that might not even work. But time is running out fast for all of them. Camille has already dosed the water with vitamin D+, and that was a genuinely smart move on the algorithm's part since it pressures everyone at once. A full memory wipe isn't exactly free either. Bernard brings Gloria Hildebrandt to see Juliette. Turns out he secretly took her off vitamin D+ a long time ago, and she's been one of his hidden allies ever since. Together they show Juliette the diary of a porter named Mission who lived through the last full reset. What's in that diary is a deeply personal, chilling account of someone describing in real time what it's like to lose your memory and your ability to think. Separately, in his own words, Bernard lays out the real cost of that decision. Back then, the head of IT, Salvador Quinn, deliberately drugged the entire silo instead of triggering the safeguard. And by his own calculations, that decision affected the lives of around 2,000 people, roughly double what Teddy's plan could have caused. Juliette finally makes her call. This moment was so tense that if I'd been one of these characters, stress probably would have made me do exactly what Carla did and forget that tap water is currently off limits. Teddy's plan almost goes through completely, but then Patrick suddenly gets on the radio and the whole thing gets called off. We know the radio meant to connect them to Martha was attached specifically to Lucas's helmet, so it's strange that he isn't the one answering. Patrick got hold of Lucas's helmet and used his radio to make contact. Whether that means Lucas himself didn't make it or just got seriously hurt, we still don't know. Patrick had his own plans lined up for after he got Lucas safely to Silo 17. Something out there seems to have changed the Outsiders leader's mind. Maybe he had a change of heart after seeing what he saw, or whatever happened to Lucas pushed him toward doing the right thing. There's also a chance it wasn't actually Kennedy on that radio at all. Maybe it was someone from Silo 1 who's been listening in on them the whole time. Fingers crossed our guys made it out alive and got to Silo 17 safely. I would absolutely love to see Solo and Patrick Kennedy interact. Meanwhile, we jump back to the era when the silos were being built. Senator Thurman and her daughter Anna seemed suspicious to me from the very start. so I wasn't shocked when it became clear they're part of whoever's behind this whole project. We also get more of Viktor Krunkovich, who's tied to Charlotte losing her memory. He plays the good guy card really well, sharing his backstory with Daniel, but that's nothing more than manipulation. It's only fair to acknowledge that Victor's carrying real trauma of his own. He lost his wife and child in a car accident after falling asleep at the wheel, and that's exactly what pushed him to dedicate his life to sparing people from unbearable memories, first testing his methods on prisoners and new recruits. Still, even if Krunkovich started out with good intentions, that doesn't change anything. It's our painful memories that shape our capacity for empathy in the first place. Without them, no matter how much they hurt, we risk turning into people who just don't feel anything anymore. Deciding for other people what they're allowed to remember, and by extension shaping who they become, is a wrong that nothing can justify. We're introduced to another player in this whole apocalypse setup, someone teased at the end of last episode, billionaire Stensen, the same guy who's big on AI oversight. He's the one funding the clinic where Charlotte stayed after her incident during the Iran mission, and he's also the one who bought up the land where all the silos now sit. Stensen brags about buying the land from local farmers, framing it as handing them generational wealth, right before dropping the most ironic line of the whole episode. According to Senator Thurman, Stensen is actually the mastermind behind the entire project. None of the cruelty we've seen play out in the silo surprises me anymore. One thing worth paying attention to during his conversation with Helen is the story about breeding a unicorn for some obscenely wealthy person, just so they can eventually get their hands on the poor creature. It's a pretty clear hint that this was never really about saving the world to begin with, and the silo's true purpose is something else entirely. Eventually, Helen and Daniel see it all with their own eyes. That same drill, the exact digging machine we've seen before, is now sitting rusted at the bottom of a water-filled cavern deep under Elevator 18. Daniel, even though he doesn't fully realize it, actually had a hand in all of this himself. Before he even got into Congress, he'd invented specialized drilling equipment that could bore tunnels without disturbing the ground above them. That very invention becomes the drill we see in Episode 7. Stensen and Thurman are using Daniel's own design to physically dig out the silos. Back in Silo 18, we finally get an honest conversation between Camille and Robert. What sets it off is the whole situation with Anthony's jacket. Camille isn't happy that Robert dragged their son into his plan. As we know, Robert smuggled passes into Judicial, which our girl Sandy ended up picking up. That honest conversation actually happens in Judicial seclusion. Camille takes Robert there, supposedly to question Nurse Amy. Camille claims there are no cameras or microphones in that room. I wouldn't be so sure about that, considering she made that exact same claim once before during a conversation with Juliette, and the algorithm ended up making it pretty clear that it can hear at least something. Maybe it really is a blind spot, and the real story is in those keys tied to the server room. I have a hunch there might be a listening device hidden in those keys, which means the algorithm could eventually order Camille to get rid of Robert. That could end up being the tipping point that finally pushes her to turn against the system. We've noticed more than once that Camille hesitates when it's time to make tough calls. She's a skilled manipulator, so I wouldn't be shocked if she's playing her own separate game, including with the vitamin D+, which wouldn't have been hard for her to swap out. Just think back to the look on her face when she realized the algorithm was somehow keeping tabs on her even in that supposed blind spot. So, we've got to talk about Ed Harwood, who's clearly hiding something down in the mines. I really loved how the head of mining sums up how the silo system actually works. According to him, genuinely dangerous criminals down in the mines are pretty rare. Most of the people sent there just took a wrong turn out of plain foolishness and never did anything catastrophic. A pretty clear jab at how tyrannical the system really is. He praises Sheriff Holston, who never put the pact above everything else and always remembered that people have families, a sharp contrast to Billings, who feels completely out of touch with reality. Basically, nobody actually follows the pact anymore, so there's no real conversation to be had about fairness. Punishment only ever seems to apply to ordinary people, while the raiders get away with doing far worse, and nobody ever holds them accountable. I really don't think Ed is behind what happened to Orla Kent. He was simply furious that his daughter Glenda missed out on a better life outside the mines. Ed's clearly hiding something, but Orla doesn't really seem to have been standing in the way of his plans. As for the head of mining's hidden agenda, it looks like Knox's father is somehow tangled up in it. None of us doubted that for a second, but getting direct confirmation still matters. Someone really was buried in the mines, but it wasn't him. Knox's father apparently made something for Ed, and in return, Ed helped him fake his own passing away by swapping in someone else's body. Mark gives Knox a pretty blunt warning. Digging any deeper into Ed's business is a solid way to bring a whole lot of trouble down on yourself. Episode 7 was a genuinely great watch, and it packed in a ton of important details. If I happen to miss anything, drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next breakdown and all my theories. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.